Okay, I want you to imagine this. You're working right now on the game that you know for a fact will be the most important release of your life. This is the case for Kimberly Hieftje. She is working on a game called Year of the Cicadas, in which she tells the story of her loss of her son Cody, who died at the age of 6 to a congenital heart disease. In Year of the Cicadas, she takes you through some very important scenes in her life that were significant in learning to live with this loss, and how she processes this grief. This obviously is a very emotional project for her, and I was interested in finding out how she worked with a team of developers and artists to realize this vision. How it's like to translate this vision to something that other people can work alongside you on. How can you let go of certain details to ensure that you actually have an interesting game? How can you remain open-minded enough to improve on a concept that you already have in mind? So how can you work with other people on your own passion project, and how can you realize your vision while working in a team? I had a very lovely chat with Kimberly, and I hope you enjoy it as well.
I'd like to talk a bit more about you because you're a professor at Yale, and you managed to combine that with video games professionally. So, can you give us a bit more background? What do you do in your everyday life?
Sure, yeah. So I'm an associate professor of pediatrics, and I'm also co-director, co-founder of XR Pediatrics at Yale, which is a lab. Um, and we focus on the use of immersive tech in focused on youth and their families, so children, adolescents, young adults and their families. And then I'm also co-founder, co-director of the Yale Center for Immersive Technologies in Pediatrics, which is basically where the lab is housed. Oftentimes at universities, you have a lab and a team, a smaller team, and you work kind of together in your lab. And it doesn't really encourage outsiders as much, just the name lab generally. But as a center, we're able to work with other departments, other schools at the university, and then we can work within the community and collaborate outward. So we've really become an open source for Yale and beyond. And yeah, we do a lot of immersive tech. I prefer immersive tech over like XR. I think because a lot of people I think made the mistake of, I wish we even wouldn't have named it XRPs because immersive tech now is becoming, AI and AR is becoming spatial audio. It's becoming, um, you know, uh, biometrics integrated into games. It's kind of becoming screen-free devices. So I think I like the term immersive tech better. Um, so a lot of the things we do around basic research, better understanding the tech and how kids engage with it. But we also do clinical applications, clinical research, and then health interventions and learning games, which is where I have spent the last 16 years, mostly focused on the serious games piece. That's where I started my after I got my PhD. That's kind of that's where I started, and I love it. It's the best. But if you think about all the other stuff we do, it's all game technology. Even if
Mhm.
you kind of wrap it into an app or you wrap it into some sort of other name, it still uses a lot of the same. We're using Unity and Unreal, and
Yeah.
we're using a lot of the same game mechanics. So,
Mhm.
game technology. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how did you follow this path? Like, were you interested in like gaming technology first, or was it the other way around?
It's funny because I actually, and this will get more into Year of the Cicadas, but when my son died in 2004, I had a bachelor's in applied health science. I, because of that experience, I was really interested in helping other bereaved parents and trying to better understand grief and loss because it was such a, I mean, as you can imagine, it was a traumatic experience. There wasn't a lot of support in the community, and it was just really interesting too, like how family and friends react when you go through such a difficult loss. And then our understanding of it is just something we don't talk openly about, like death and dying and grief. And I was really fascinated by that, and I wanted to better understand that, but then I also wanted to help other parents like me. So I actually went back to get my master's and PhD and grief and loss in the family. And it was housed under a health behavior PhD. So my PhD is technically health behavior and education psychology through the IU School of Public Health. But my master's thesis and my dissertation were focused on how we find meaning in loss. So meaning making in loss. And I was really interested in, at the time, this is 2009, like how others were using social media as a way to externalize grief or remember people and find meaning in loss. But then it was really hard to do. I did my master's and PhD within 4.5 years, because I just wanted it done. And there was a job here at Yale that was creating, it was a 5-year project making a serious game around risk reduction.
Mhm.
And I was like, I'll apply. I can take what I know.
Yeah.
I know research and science, and I love games. I've been a gamer, and I got the job. Once I kind of shifted from research on death and dying, grief and loss, which is hard to do when you're growing through your own grief, especially loss of a child, which it's hard. Going into games was kind of my savior, because it was fun, and I got to use my skills with a behavior change, my degree, and it's a way to be creative too, right? A lot of times we get PhDs, and for in research we don't get to be creative. So it was this wonderful way of using a PhD and being creative and visually and making things and seeing how it all put together. So I made that shift, and I never looked back. So yeah, I've been at Yale since then. I started in another lab, and then eventually moved departments and started my own games lab focused on the use of VR and AR. And now we've kind of grown and expand to think about other immersive tech and clinical applications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're still very I'd say very passionate about like this technology and like communicating and getting across hard emotions and especially with kids, making sure that certain messages come through. What are the biggest advantages that video games have that other tools don't have?
For kids,
Yeah.
I think the easiest one is that kids like to play games. Also, we have a lot of kids that do better with experiential learning, right? Getting in, making choices, seeing what happens, doing that in a safe space. Kids that game generally have higher, reasoning and cognitive skills anyway, just for gaming. So, I mean, there's a lot of benefits, I think. I think that the easiest win is that kids would prefer to play games than have some more didactic lectures. So I think it's this, and also games provide an opportunity for skill building, where you can actually practice skills in a game, and you can practice over and over and over again. When you think about kids and like worksheets and whatever, like you fill it out once and you're done. And then you get a score, and that's your score. Games, we can go practice over and over and over again until we've mastered a skill. And the games can grow with us. It can get easier when we need it to get easier. It can get harder when we need to be challenged. Yeah, I think, and then also socially, what games can do for kids. A lot of kids, I don't think we can dispel the fact that some kids have very important real relationships online, gaming. So
Yeah.
whether on Roblox or Fortnite or, whatever. Like those relationships can be just as important, if not even more important, than relationships in person for some kids.
Do you also look at the other side of the equation then, where like parents don't always understand those relationships that they have? Is that something that you're also concerned with?
Yeah, well, I think it's actually, I think it's always up to a parent. You can never let a parent, like, it's their decision at the end of the day whether they want their kids to play for little or a lot or whatever. I think it's more about parents understanding the systems and the platforms in which kids are using, understanding the parental, like how you can set up, the parental guardians and I think that is more important than anything than actually like the time spent. I think if if your kid's on a platform that you can restrict maybe, access to a credit card. We're thinking
Yeah.
about Roblox, right? Or Fortnite, like can restrict like new people trying to contact them, or they can read their messages or monitor and what they're doing. That's a way to keep a kid safe as opposed to you may have 1 hour whatever you're playing, go for it, 10-year-old. I think it's just parents have, I think they just have to be involved. Um, that's more important, I think, than anything, than like this debate of how much and what. I think it's more just parents also playing along and what they feel they feel okay about for their kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember growing up that like my parents didn't understand games at all. Well, they had a passing interest. Like at some time, they made the decision to buy a PlayStation for us and stuff like that, and they played some games themselves back in the day. But um, it's always I felt it was always hard to communicate like what we were doing as kids versus what they thought we were doing with the consoles.
Yes.
But I can imagine that that's shifting now because a lot of parents also grew up with these systems in their
Yeah.
homes.
Yes. Yeah. You're right. I think, yeah, I mean, we have a 12-year-old, Naomi Bernard, my husband's daughter, and I think, Bernard and I have every game system probably and news game in the house.
What a
So,
life.
yeah. So I think on our end, we're probably like, why don't you want to play games? Or let's play game, like we always have the board games and the Switch 2 out, and So I think
Yeah.
it depends on the family, and there's no right or wrong. It's whatever families do that they feel is right for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does. I think you are right, though. For those that grew up with the systems, it's easier for us to kind of jump in.
Yeah, because I have two young kids myself, and for me it's kind of also the other way around, where I have like a Switch 2 in the house, and I'm playing Mario Kart, and I'm like, yeah, you guys should play this, should try this, and they are a bit interested. They're still quite young, so they're not very proficient yet with those games. That I'm always like, oh, you should do this, you should, and I'm afraid that I might be scaring them off a bit at some point. But I mean, the interest will grow in itself, I guess.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be pushy at all.
But also,
Um,
too, what a wonderful way to bond with your kid with something
yeah,
that's special to you, too.
yeah, exactly.
That's been so cool with my own daughter, too. She's 24, but yeah, like, we
So I
just been
mean,
The Sims and
if anything, games aren't bound to any age. Well,
it's
of course, there is an age where you have to learn how to control games, of course. But other than that, they can speak to anyone.
it's so
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Um, so actually, going back to your story, you kind of came full circle then with Year of the Cicadas right now. Maybe it's best if you explain a bit yourself what this project is and why it's so near to your heart.
Yeah. Yeah. So my son died of a congenital heart defect in 2004. So he had some pretty serious heart defects, just a minor surgery that he didn't pull through. So it was unexpected when we lost him. Uh, but when he died in the late spring. So we buried him in the early part of April of 2004. And not too long after he died, the brood 10 cicadas came out of the graveyard where Cody was buried. And I was there every day because that's where I felt close to him. That's where it was my way of, I was grieving at the graveyard quite a lot. And I had not been paying attention to the news or anything. I was I was going through my own stuff. And then all of a sudden, these millions of cicadas came out of the graveyard. And I spent the next 6 to 8 weeks with these cicadas. The one that they were Brood 17-year cicadas, so they only come out every 17 years. And they had came out when we had buried Cody. And I don't know if you've I know they don't have the periodical cicadas, I think, in Belgium like they do
No.
here. Yeah, so they there's like 14 year, 17 year. There's a lot of different broods. They're the loudest insect on Earth. They're louder than a jackhammer or a jet passing by. Like you'll get the alerts on your watch. It'll be like loud environment. They're
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
deafening, and you can imagine millions of them. And they're like this cacophony, this chorus, and it was like it's something I'll never forget as long as I live because like it was I was already struggling with like the normalcy of spring coming in, right? Like it's springtime. Why are the trees getting their leaves? Why are flowers budding? Why is it warming up and grass growing? Like it didn't seem right. Like the world was saying, "Look at me. I'm continuing on. I'm rebirth. Like it's just continuing on." And so the cicadas kind of shook that up. They made the world feel like eerie and unworldly, as it was supposed to feel, because it was not normal that my son was dead. So, and then I also had a lot of these thoughts too of like this panic of like the cicadas knowing they would return in 17 years, but my son would still be gone. And I would remember thinking about that, like how does somebody live 17 years without their child? And if I'm not the mother of a child with special needs, like, you know, going through heart surgeries and being a part, you know, taking care of him and being his mom, then who am I? And who would I be in 17 years? And I had no idea. I couldn't even imagine. But it was like I had a lot of panic about that, of how I was going to live day to week to month to year without Cody. And then time passes and life passes, and you know you don't move on, but you move forward because life pushes you along. And then there you know it, 17 years have passed and those cicadas return. And then you sit with them, and I did. I went back and sat with the cicadas and just reflected back on the 17 years, you know, and what that looked like. Because you have to remember too, I went back to school around grief and loss, so I knew so much of it, so I could really reflect back on a kind of a theoretical way, you know, about my own life experience, but also from what I'd learned about grief and loss. And I always knew I was going to write something about the cicadas or do something about that, even when it happened in 2004. And then an opportunity came. I think this is, you know, I had this idea of VR would be amazing because I really wanted somebody to feel what I felt in the graveyard, like to be fully surrounded by cicadas. So yeah, so we got I submitted it to Unity for Humanity, and we got funded. It wasn't a ton of money, but it was enough to get us going. And then the journey began, and it's taken us about 3 years. We're going into 3 year, you know, third year now.
Takes a while, yeah.
It always does, yeah. But we're wrapping up. I mean, we'll be done in a few weeks. But so the game, it's a narrative-based game. It's really audio focused, which is like what I wanted. We were with Mel Bartel from Flathead Studios in Austria. She did the art, which is just breathtaking. It's just the art is so beautiful, but the sound. So I also have a colleague. He's at the New England Conservatory, so he's a musician and a professor of music. And when he was here at Yale, he wrote his dissertation on NES music, like on a Nintendo, like the beauty and amazement of, you know, NES music. And so that actually, he wrote a book on it. So he's like the expert, and so he's really fascinated by music for games. So and he's a good friend of mine. So it's like the perfect person to be on this team. So he wrote an original musical score for it. We have a lot of the layers of the ambisonic. So we have ambisonic. We did like a 6-channel ambisonic audio with the cicadas. But then we also use a lot of spatial audio and localized audio too. Some of it we have it sounding very analog from a radio that's sitting out on the table. So we could use audio files that were not as crisp, right? Or weren't spatial. And then we also had these really kind of very well done, like, you know, other layers of audio. So it becomes this really, I think the audio drives the story more than the art, which is what we wanted it to be.
as it should,
Um,
I guess.
yeah, but you kind of move from scene to scene. It's non-linear. So you can kind of have, there's like there's 7 scenes, I think, where you move through like scenes and memories um, of things that have happened, their personal stories that have happened over 17 years. And you kind of, like for instance, one of them is, it's a Christmas scene, like a Christmas tree. There's one
Yeah.
Christmas tree on this kind of mountain when it's snowing and there's beautiful music. And you as a player are decorating the tree with these digitized objects that are actually on my tree that my mom gave. They were trains. She gave them to Cody every year, and then after Cody died, she continued to send them every year for Cody. So I have 20 of them now because it's been 20 years. So there's a lot of kind of bittersweetness. I get these out every year, and it's like my moment with Cody, and I think about him. So as a player, you get to decorate that tree and put a train track around the tree because he was obsessed with trains, and I narrate and talk about the story. So the mechanics in the game are very much like you're embodying, like you're embodying the kind of the narrator, but you're not. You're kind of walking along with the narrator, and the mechanics that you do are very tied to the story. So we have a bunch of those kind of smaller scenes about the difficulties of holidays, leaving the hospital, what that's like, when we yeah, and then also the main one is like the graveyard and being able to sit with the cicadas. And I just remember like flicking them off of the headstones because they felt like they were intrusive. And so
Yeah.
you can do that in the game. You can go and just try to get them off all the headstones. So yeah, yeah.
Wow. That's it's quite a I can imagine that it's quite a emotional process to relive this entire journey this way. How was that experience for you? Because you had, of course, this idea of telling this story and bringing it to life, but video games are such a unique medium to do this because it's more interactive than anything else you can do.
Hmm.
How was that experience for you?
Um, I think that's why it's taken 3 years. Because sometimes I've just had to pick it up and then set it back down. And I've had a wonderful team that's been great about recognizing when I can't move quite as fast as they want to. Um, I think I mean, part of it, part of this too is like going back and going through old boxes and revisiting important locations like the cemetery and the hospital and like all of that. Taking film. I interviewed my family. I interviewed friends. Talked to Cody's old doctor. The little neighbor across the street that was Cody's best friend. Cody was 6 and he was 8. And he messaged me out of nowhere a couple years ago while we were making this to say that he is in medical school getting his like his focus is on pediatric cardiology because of Cody. Like he moved away right after Cody died. I hadn't heard from him. And then 20 years later to hear that he's because of Cody, because when he was 8, he knew the little boy across the street who had a heart problem. So now his entire life is dedicated to helping kids with heart problems like Cody. So I learned a ton of stuff along the way that I didn't know. And so, like, what I thought my story was in the beginning actually shifted quite a lot as I talked to people and as I pieced things together and reflected. It's called autoethnography is the method. It's kind of like when you do a biography, but an autoethnography is all about like a person reflecting back on their own past and going through like writings and journals and pictures and objects and stuff and reflecting that in terms of the bigger picture of like grief and loss. So yeah, it was hard. A lot of times I had to just put it away because there's like the difficulty. There's the difficult part of being vulnerable with your story. Then there's also the difficult part of being vulnerable with your team of colleagues that you've worked with, but not necessarily cried with or
Yeah,
shared these like very intimate,
different
personal
relationship.
things, pictures and objects and stories and yeah. So I it's definitely brought us together. I think my colleagues and I in a different way that I was not expecting. But you have to let it go. Like it's hard. You have to be vulnerable and be okay with it. Because again, you're being vulnerable about a topic that people don't like to talk about. So that's even harder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, yeah, it's coming together really nicely.
So, because I'm trying to understand a bit the structure there of how you're working, because you work with preview labs for the technical part, the development of the game itself. So what's your role in it? Is it like creative director, or how do you fit into the whole puzzle of developing the actual game itself?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's our team is also kind of a little studio here too. So we do a ton of like for example, I'm redoing all the audio, like my narration, because I did it on a kind of a crappy mic that I'm not happy with. But we have a really great setup here for audio, and I have a person on my team that does great at audio and editing. So I think on Wednesday we're going through and recording all of that, and then he'll edit the files and then send them to Preview Labs. So I think sometime, and then we hired an external artist that I worked with. The storyline, the audio, everything. I don't know. I don't know what titles I would have. I just I had my hands in everything.
Yeah.
And then of course Preview Labs has been also very patient to try to help me get my vision out there, but then also being able to also provide input and thoughts from their perspective of what might feel better, work but get it better in terms of gameplay.
You have a game that's very closely tied to like a very emotional story for you, and you have a story in your mind of how you want to explain this, but at the same time you want this to be an engaging game, and you want people that interact with it to have the right experience, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
How hard is it to shift your vision to sort of fit more of a gameplay structure?
It wasn't for me it wasn't hard. I mean, I've been doing this for 16 years, so I always kind of look through it through like a game lens anyway. But I think there has to be a place where you have to recognize that there are everybody brings their own skills to the table, and you have to leave space for that. So other gamers, other game designers and developers are going to have amazing ideas that are probably better than yours. Listen to them, right? Like let everybody feed in. And I think that's what's been, like I had an idea of what the art, but to really hand over, and I had these ideas of the art, but to be able to hand it over to an artist and let her make it her own art too, because this is her. And and then same with the music, with Andrew and the score and the audio, being able to hand it to him too and say, this is my vision, but I want you to bring yourself into it too, because this is your skills and your talent. And I think that's the same way with the gameplay too, is like, allowing everybody to have a piece of it. So yeah, because my ideas aren't necessarily the best ideas, right? Or my vision isn't necessarily.
Yeah, but of course it's your story, so I can imagine that and that's, I mean, I think it's something that a lot of game designers struggle with. Like they have an idea and they want to create their game, but at the end of the day, when you're working with a team, it's a team effort, so everyone has to put a piece of themselves into it. So it's very I'm not sure what the right word is, but it's a beautiful thing to see that you are able to see that it needs more than just your story and like your vision. Of course, it's what drives the project, but it still leaves some space for contributions of the rest of the team.
Yeah, yes. Well, I also think too many of us have experienced grief and loss or something really hard and difficult. And I think that played into it too. Like people can kind of bring their own their own emotions and feelings into a game about grief and loss. If you've experienced that, then you're not coming in empty-handed. You're coming in with something anyway. So, yeah, yeah. I think that's the coolest part. Is always on teams, leaning into where people's skills just naturally come through and trusting them. That their value and their is important. Their input, they have value added always. So yeah, and I think that's also, it's been, like I said, 3 years. I think, especially for it's a polished prototype, but it's not a super fancy game. We didn't have a huge budget for it, but
But
we
it's
took our time.
stylized though. Like everything
Yeah,
that I've seen of it so far, it kind of doubles down on that artistic feel a bit, so that it can feel timeless as well.
yeah, it's true. And like I said, Melanie um, from Flathead Studio, like will be forever grateful to her for she saw my vision, she got in my head, and it was just 100 times better than what I could have imagined. That part was just quite a treat, and Andrew too, the music and audio. It's wonderful when you can just trust your team, to to be a part of the ride with you.
So, did you run into moments where you felt like this isn't quite it?
Yeah, and then we changed it. I think that's the great part about working with the prototype too. And also too, the hardest part is always letting go of the things that had to get cut because you ran out of money, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, there were some other really important scenes that we had to cut because we just ran out of funds. So that's been hard, and also having to dial down what you want and then what you can afford are often
yeah,
very different. So letting go, I think, has been the hardest part of letting go of things that are so important because it's all important, but just not having the money to do it.
yeah.
Yeah,
That kind of leans it into how you got the funding to start this project. It was this grant by Unity. Um, is this how does that process work? Like how can you get involved with grants like that? Because a lot of people have ideas for games, but they're not sure where to start or like how to finance it.
yeah,
How do you find these grants and what do you have to do to get involved with it?
right. This is a excuse me. Right. So this is a good one. This is it's open to anybody. Unity, and it's Unity for Social Good and Unity for Humanity. I think they may have changed the name, um, and it's not a difficult submission. It's right there in line. You propose. You can send in a slide deck, and I was lucky enough to get chosen. And it's not just like they give you the money and walk away, too. Like it's been 3 years, and I still meet every month, and we walk through and I'm still working with them now to help me get the game promoted, and you know, whatever kind of internal resources they have to offer. If you get stuck on something or need support, they're there. So Unity's been fantastic. So I think there are these little kind of pilot funds. We've also gotten one from Epic Games before. They always have their little, I forget what they're called, but they're little small pots for indie developers. Unity, I know, is leaning more into trying to support indie games and indie developers. So definitely look into what Unity has to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, would you always do that, or are there also limitations that might keep you away from a grant like that?
Um, I mean, I think I've learned that, you're going to probably have to apply to 10, 12 grants before you might get one. So you just have to be okay with, and also resubmitting the same things every year. If you've got a real passion project, just don't give up on it. Just keep trying, keep talking to people, find out where the pots are. And even if it's just a small amount, it gets started. Something doesn't have to be, when we think games, even if you get a few, 10,000 or something, you can do quite a lot in terms of prototyping, even if it never becomes digital and it just lives on paper until you're able to find more funds to bring it into something digital. I tend to, like, a lot of times we do make card games, before we make actual, the digital games, because card games, if you can figure out a lot of the mechanics there, that helps. Or, we do tons of wireframes. So there's always things you can be doing even if you don't have money, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And now we're getting more and more programs, like, like we have Twitch and there's tons of stuff that we can do online. Yeah. We don't
To
need a
raise
lot.
awareness, you mean?
No, it's if you don't have coding experience, right? There's a lot of programs you can make some pretty good, like Scratch. There's things you can do to make some games or game ideas, even just for the purpose of trying to get additional funding. If you can try to show somebody what you're trying to do and what you can do with more money. We've gotten really scrappy. Like, all of us, most of us have been working for free on this project, like in terms of our actual salaries, right? We don't get paid for it. So I think that's the big thing too. Passionate projects are going to be probably on your own time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the luxury would be getting paid for doing your passion project, but I've not been that fortunate.
Yeah. Well, maybe the return of it will be will kind of combat that time that you put into it a bit, right?
Yeah, yeah. I have bigger dreams and goals for it. So, our immediate one is that are going to be working to get it into medical education here at Yale and do some pilot testing to see if playing a game, can help increase your kind of empathy towards, parental bereavement and more around a better understanding or awareness of the uniqueness of it. And I think the big one is maybe things that people say with good intention, but can feel very isolating. Like the things, and we have a scene in the game where it's just layered voices of the things that people say that, like they'll say, you're young, you can still have more, or you're lucky you still have your daughter, or he's not suffering anymore. He's an angel now. Nobody knows my religion. When somebody says, well, he's with God or he's an angel now, if I don't believe in God or an angel, you've just really made me feel isolated. Like, or by telling me that I should be grateful for the child I do have doesn't help me with the feelings that I'm having for losing my other child.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So people come into it sometimes, I think, feeling very well intentioned. They mean well, but what they're saying it just makes you feel more isolated.
Yeah.
So trying to help people understand those kind of things, the difference between what we can say and maybe the gestures of what we can do to support people that are grieving. Yeah.
So who is this game for?
So it's definitely for the general population. I think everybody needs to have it's a story, and I think we learn well through stories. I think if we're trying to understand grief and loss and what the effects of that on parents, if I just listed you all the things, higher risk for mental health issues and physical health and marital strain, social isolation, anxiety, depression, that doesn't mean anything to you. But if I put it around a story, maybe then you'll remember the story, right? We remember stories of people that have diseases more than we remember the disease itself. So I think stories are really important. We're seeing it more and more in medical education. But outside from the medical education piece, I want this to be a connection to the general population as a way, one, to help people understand how to help and support bereaved parents or those that are grieving, maybe as a place for people to think about their own grief or loss that they've had in their lives and how that they may connect to that. And then also maybe a way to kind of get people comfortable with talking about these hard topics, just to make it more conversational. It's okay to talk about it. And then on the other side, there's the medical education piece that we're really hoping to integrate it for those that are being trained to work with kids that are maybe at end of life or palliative care or that have died. So staff have a better understanding of how to support families. So, yeah.
So this, I mean, it's clear this is a project that's very important for you. I can imagine that there are more people out there sitting on this idea for a very personal project, like this real passion project, but they find it hard to pinpoint when it's the right time to actually work on it, because you can always get better at what you do, or like technology might evolve. Why did you feel this was the right time to do it?
I honestly think it was the cicadas because they returned.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they returned the 17 years. And I think that was like they've returned. Like it's time. It just felt it. It was like it had the
Went full
bookend,
circle.
right?
Yeah.
It had.
Yeah.
It's not that the story is over. This is a story that will my meaning and my grief will last a lifetime because the cicadas are going to return again. What in another 14 years now, right? They'll come again, and then it will be another chapter, another big chapter of this story. But in terms of bookends, that's the year of the cicadas. We have a emergence, and then we have a reemergence. So it just like felt like the right time to if I had to find a time, was it 20 years, 17, 15, 17? It's going to be 17. So
Yeah.
that's what we focus on. Yeah. Because you're right. At some point, you just have to just
You have to take
decide.
the jump and say, now is the time. Did you ever have doubts about it, though?
Oh, always from day one. I think, but it was always, this is very vulnerable. I'm putting myself out there, and every time I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to cry, right? Like, I don't know how I'm holding it together now, but I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry. I'm going to get weepy about it. It's hard to talk about it. It's hard to think about. But that part's never going to go away. I'm going to miss my son forever. So whether it's 5 years, 10, 20, 25, it's always going to be there. So there was that hard hurdle of getting over the part about being vulnerable and crying in front of people, especially your team, who like in an academic setting, you don't show that side often.
Yeah.
And it's very personable. So, or very personal. So that was the hardest part, is just getting over that. And sometimes too, that feeling of what if somebody doesn't connect to it, or they think the narrative is bad, or my voice is bad, or the mechanics in the game aren't that great, or they think it's too long or too short, or there's not enough gameplay in it. Like I've had all the thoughts. What if nobody likes it? What if nobody plays it? It's all there. It's all there. And as we're getting closer to releasing it, it's becoming more and more, the noise in my head's becoming bigger and bigger. But yeah, I guess we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
I think for me, I did this thing that I knew this is how I always explain it to people I know. Of all the things, the games I've made and the stuff I've done, and I started a lab and a center here at Yale doing really cool and important stuff, this thing I'm doing now will be the most important thing I will ever do in my life. Like, I just know, I feel it and I know it. Like, this is the most important thing. This honors my son. It brings my whole world full circle from when I got my PhD. And it was something that I've always wanted to talk about, and never had that channel. I never had that way to talk about it. So this will be the most important thing I ever do. And I know that. So, yeah. So as we're like submitting it to festivals, and like right now I'm trying to create a booth for this, we got it accepted at a conference in South Korea that we're going to go to in October.
Wow.
Yeah. So thinking about how I want to demo this in a way that it's not just come sit and put a headset on and play, but I want it a place where you can, we envision like this big tree that you can decorate a cicada and put somebody's name on it that you also maybe lost in your life, and watch that tree kind of grow over all these festivals and conferences as we go along. And maybe you don't want to be in a VR head, so maybe we can put you in headphones and you can sit in a corner and watch it on a screen. You know, like ways to get people to sit with it quietly and talk about it, and also express and connect as a community of others that have lost. Because I will say this too, there's nothing more powerful than having an excuse to say like your deceased child's name, right? For any of us that have lost somebody, especially after 17 years, 20 years has passed, nobody's asking anymore. So whenever you have that opportunity to just say their name or talk about them, it's wonderful. So I'm hoping that people will also have that feeling of like, I get to write down somebody I care about, their name, and add it to these other names of these other community people at the conference that have lost somebody that they love too. So yeah, I'm hoping that it opens this discussion about loss and grief, and not just, put this on and
just a one-off experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my goal. So that's what the goal next, like, so this idea, maybe nobody plays it, but maybe somebody does, and it's important to that person. Or maybe it's somebody that lost a child, and it gives them an opportunity to say their child's name and tell me about it or share with others. And it, like, I think that the opportunities for the discussion are going to be more important than maybe the game itself is what we're talking about. Yeah.
So are there any plans of bringing it also beyond VR to make it even more accessible?
Yes, I have a meeting with a foundation next month, and I'm trying to see if they will support. I've also got a few other people trying to help me to see if we can find funding for that, more around the accessibility. Because VR, if you don't have a headset, you can't access it. Or if you don't want to be in a headset, you can't access it. Trying to think how we can, which I don't want it to port one-to-one, so it will be another big project. But with funding, I think we could do a really great job of creating more of a web-based game or a 2D game.
Yeah. So I'm very curious to play it myself now. So I'm looking forward to experiencing the story myself.
Yeah.
I'm very, very interested in how the emotions will be translated. I love games that take you through that journey and that want to evoke some emotions. So I'm looking forward to testing it myself. For people like me who want to play it, is there already like a release date, or is there any opportunity where they get to play it soon?
Yeah, so if you go to yearofthecicadas.com, we have a sign up just for the updates. We should have a release date. It should be available for release and up, on the Meta Store here, maybe within a month. But so you can either visit the website and sign up on the newsletter to get or the updates. So when we do have an exact date, I'm actually working with Unity over the next week or two to try to finalize that so we can all get on the same page. But yeah, it should be available very soon. Very soon.
So the 3-year struggle, I'd say, of creating this is finally coming to an end. And then
it is. And there's part of me that's, because every time I play it, I see something that I want fixed. But we're out of money. We have to learn to be.
Yeah.
If something is, somebody said this and it really stuck well. If something is 80% of where you want it to be, that's okay. Consider it complete. Otherwise, I'll just never get it out there because I'm like, oh, I need to re-record my voice here. I don't like that here. Maybe the volume needs to be changed and balanced here. So I think we're just going to do it. We're going to put it out there and then see what happens. And then as we kind of keep moving forward to figure out how we can get the funding to do more.
Yeah.
And move it into a platform. Yeah. I do have a funny story for you, though. I'm sure Jerry wouldn't mind at Preview Labs. So a big part of this, we kept getting deliveries, the iterations delivered, the builds, and I'm like, it's too loud. The cicadas are too loud, Jerry. We can't hear the narrator. They're too loud. And everyone's saying it, like in my lab, like they're too loud. I can't hear anything else. All I hear are cicadas. And we kept telling Jerry that, and he didn't understand. He was like, I hear everything fine. The narration's really loud. It turns out that Jerry can't hear the frequency of the cicadas.
Yeah, he actually told me. I interviewed him before, and he told me that he thought there was no audio put in already.
He did this whole time. We've been working on this for years, and he just recognized that there's actual cicadas in the cicada game, but he hasn't been able to hear them the entire time.
Imagine working on a game with the title Year of the Cicadas, not being able to hear the cicadas themselves.
Oh my God, I laughed so hard because he felt so bad. But I was like, Jerry, this is like the best story ever. Like, if you're thinking of like postmortems, which my favorite thing to do with games is, sit around and listen to postmortems. But I think that's like the best postmortem story ever. Is the person that's overseeing the development
Actually couldn't
couldn't
hear
hear the
everything.
cicadas. Didn't know it for the entire project until the end.
Actually, it's fortunate that you found out. Otherwise, maybe a lot of players wouldn't have been able to hear the actual cicadas in the game.
Yes, yeah. And then another funny story too is we took it to Serious Play, not last year, the year before, just to get feedback on it. And there's the very beginning of the game, one of the best parts is you hear the cicadas and you see one, and if you put your hand out, it'll land on your hand. It'll fly to you, land on your hand, and you can pull it to your close so you can hear like what one cicada, because it sounds different, right? This girl that put it on, she mentions briefly, she's like, I don't like insects, I don't like cicadas. And then she puts it on, and then the cicada flies at her and lands on her hand. She starts losing her mind.
Oh no.
And she's like doing this, which is instead of just doing this, she like runs around. She's like, no.
That's the power of VR right there.
We're like, this works, but maybe we need a disclosure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure what she expected when you called your game Year of the Cicadas, and she didn't expect to interact with an insect at one point or other. So
Yeah. Well, I get it. Like, we learned from that we needed a tip that just said, if you want the cicada to land on your hand, put your hand out. So
right.
if you don't
Right.
want it to, then just don't put your hand
Just
out.
skip it.
But,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's the power of feedback and iterations, right?
Yeah. Part of, yes, play testing. Play testing is a must.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I maybe have one I'd consider big question before we wrap up. So for anyone out there who is sitting on that passion project and they're like, maybe now's the time, what advice would you give to them? How can they realize it? What's the thing they have to keep in mind when they're working on it?
I think they have to keep in mind. I think now, the answer is do it now. Like, not the sense of like you have to like drop everything, do and focus on it, but it doesn't have to happen all at once right away. If you have an idea, maybe start, maybe do some maybe do some story, right? Like, just block out some stories, or maybe look at like wireframes, because anybody can do that. And like, I use PowerPoint. PowerPoint's great, like for coming, because you can flip through it and make things move. To just start piecing it together, like, or other games that have inspired you, or other art in games that have inspired. Doesn't even have to be in games. Things that have inspired you, like, just keep coming back to it. And I think that's the best part too. I think this is what I will say too, not having a timeline can benefit a lot, because it's amazing what you think you want in the beginning. It's not the thing you end up with, because you go through so many thoughts and like, oh, what about this? Or, oh, I have a great idea. Like, instead of doing this, let's do that, and it's going to constantly keep evolving until it gets better and better. And the things that you're putting into it early are all free. You don't need money to write a story or create some sort of, design, like any sort of game design that you have. That would be my main thing. It's your passion projects. Nobody even needs to know about it. I would say that though too, nobody needs to know about it, true, if you want to quietly work on it. But if you tell others, then it puts this pressure to do it, right? Especially when others are depending on you, like, if they're a part of it, then they're like waiting on you. I would say that's also the thing. We tend to complete things when we tell others and have deadlines, and we tell others about it. We're more likely to finish something. So maybe that's also the answer, is put it out there.
Just be vocal about your passion project, and then maybe you'll find that drive to actually finish it.
Yeah. And it's okay to set it down and pick it up because life gets busy with jobs and kids and family and friends. And it's okay to pick it up and then put it down and pick it up. That's okay too. Yeah.
Great. That's awesome advice. I think it's the kind of advice that some people need to hear. It's the same that it applies a bit to me as well. I'm 32 years old now. I've been saying all my life, I want to do something with video games. At the start of this year, I was like, I've been saying that for a long time. Maybe I should just start. And I'm also consciously being vocal about it now, telling people that I'm doing something with it so that I don't have a way out. Yes. I kind of have that social pressure of like, hey, how's your game going along? And it's, I've been working on it lately. But it's just, indeed, it's creating also, I guess, that identity around yourself, that like this is a part of you now, and
Yes.
and you kind of are responsible for bringing that to a good conclusion. That's there's something powerful to that as well, I think.
100%. And I think also too, I don't code. I never learned, and I don't have the time. And at this point, it's okay. I still think of myself as a game designer, game developer, because it takes so many of us. Like, you have programmers, but then there's so many other people that are helping, to create a game, are essential pieces of the machine, right? It's not just the programmer. So I think it's really cool and awesome to call yourself a game designer, even if you can't code or program. Like, we all can be creators. We are all creators, right? And now, again, like the way that programs are accessible, and they're easier and easier to use. Who's to say if you create something in Scratch that does not make you a game designer, right? Or if you put it all on paper, why can't that also be a game design? Yeah.
I think that's an interesting point. On the other hand, I guess that a lot of people who say I want to make games, they already imagine the Steam page or like the PlayStation Store page or something, and like it has to be a game that's like it competes with all of these other titles that you love so much. So if you have that as an end goal and you're not already like good at coding or whichever skill that you're still lacking to create that, would you have any advice of, okay, if this is really something that you want to do but you don't have the time or the ability to learn some of these skills, how would you advise people on actually creating their project without being able to do everything themselves?
Yeah, I really think it's almost difficult to do it yourself, to be honest. Find the team, or marry somebody that owns their own video game prototyping company. That also helps. Though he does make me pay him for any projects that we work on together. But I would say find the people. There's people that are always wanting to be a part of, and if you have a true passion too, there's going to be the people that relate to your passion or have empathy towards it or want to support you. And you could be, it's amazing when you can just bring people together that have all kinds of creative skills. And then maybe that means you've got the creative skills and you find the funding to hire the programmer to do the work, or hire the artist. I'm never going to be able to do my own art. So, um, and then there is something beautiful too about being a part of a team that does something, even if it's your own passion project. That doesn't mean you can't be the lead on it or the producer, the creator of it, because it wouldn't have happened without you, right? And your story,
Yeah.
your passion.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think a lot of people have this dream of being like a solo dev, but yeah, I think that's probably the hardest way to go about it is do everything yourself and finding that team. And to your point, I think if you have a good idea or like something that you're very passionate about, that's probably all you need to find some people who might want to help you out in some way or others.
Yes.
Just starting and doing something is probably the most important advice you can give someone.
Yeah. You just started. Yeah. I agree. I mean, if you don't do it, then it doesn't get done, right?
Yeah, indeed. That's pretty crucial part of the whole equation. So yeah.
Yeah.
Good. One more question then. If people are interested in the game or in your work, where can they find you? Can they reach out to you? How can we find you
Yeah.
online, offline, maybe?
Sure. Well, yearofthecicadas.com, it's all one, yearofthecicadas.com, is where it's information about the team, the project, the game, everything there. Or if you want to know more about what we do as a lab, and because we create a lot of games, and a lot of really cool studies, I think, and clinical apps. That's xrpeds.org. So it's xrpeds.org.
Right. Awesome.
And my information's there for email and all that. Um, yeah, that's us.
Thank you. Good. Maybe one more question before we leave. I keep
Yeah.
saying one more question. I'm kind of baiting you into answering more questions here. If I want to talk to someone else interesting in like the games industry to teach aspiring game developers to learn more about this craft, who do you think I should definitely have a word?
I would say another great person. There's a lot of people that have inspired me. Um, Paul Darvasi. He is he was an, he's an English teacher, taught I think middle school English literature, and he would use games instead of books to teach kids. So their entire class would be like on, I don't know if you ever played Gone Home. Yeah, so his instead of a book, it was Gone Home, and the kids would break that down in terms of
Wow, I'd love his class.
everything. Yeah, so he did that, and I mean, he was the most popular teacher in the school, obviously, but he had a way of breaking down games to look at them as pieces of art and literature, and and use them for teaching. That being said, so he did that, and then not too long after that, he went back to get his PhD in game design. So now, he's an English. He doesn't teach English anymore. Has his own game studio. And it was also, we just came back from the Serious Play conference just a couple days ago. It was in Rochester, New York. He's now the president, oversees that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I love to hear people's paths to getting to their passion.
Yeah.
And his is, as an English teacher, how he used games to get kids excited about thinking about literature and story and, you know, and time and place and all of that important stuff. And then he followed his passion through and got a PhD and now has his own game studio. So,
Amazing.
and
Yeah.
overseas, yes, rightfully so, a really important conference in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would say Dr. Paul Devasi, um, I would say he's either based out of Toronto or Montreal, maybe
Okay.
Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I'll try to get in touch with him. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
I'm telling you, he's just a delight to talk to as well. So.
Good. Well, now I'm not going to ask you any more questions. This actually was the last one. Thank you so much for talking about your game. A lot of best wishes, and of course, and good luck with releasing it, and hopefully, continuing the journey after the initial release to bring it to more devices.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity. This was so fun. I really enjoyed this.
I agree.
Thanks for watching this video. On this channel, I try to help aspiring game devs like myself to find the inspiration and the input they need on their gaming journey. If that's something that you like, make sure to subscribe and ring that bell to be notified of the next video I'll be releasing. See you in the next one.